Okay, we are back talking New England Patriots football on the Our Lads Football Network with Evan Lazar of CLNS Media and Patriots Press Pass on YouTube. Evan, the Patriots continue to rock and roll 5-0 straight up and against the spread over their last 5 games, outscoring their opponents during the stretch by 25 points per game, taking on the Tennessee Titans this Sunday in the first of several major matchups to determine whether the Patriots are a true Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, this is a litmus test or whatever you want, a measuring stick month for the Patriots. Not even just a game, a month. All next games, 2 against Buffalo, Indy, and then obviously on Sunday against Tennessee. We're going to learn if this 5-game winning streak the Patriots have been on, they've played 4 kind of lousy to banged up football teams, right? They beat the Browns, who are a decent team, but they did it without Nick Chubb in that game against Cleveland, which is a huge difference, playing the Browns without their top running back and really their top 2 running backs, because Kareem Hunt didn't play in the game either. So they were on their 4th-string back in Dearness Johnson. And the Chargers game in LA is a quality win for the Patriots. That was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was a kind of a statement coming out party type of game for New England. But these next 4 weeks, we're going to learn, are they truly contenders, or is this a productive season with a rookie quarterback that looks promising, with the arrow pointing upward on the team, and then maybe next year is really the year that the Patriots truly go for it, right? They're obviously going for it with Bill Belichick every year, but maybe they're a year too soon with Mac to be able to be true Super Bowl contenders. But if they go 3-1 in this 4-game stretch, then maybe we'll be talking about this differently in a month.
Yeah, I think, and look, to me, there's a big difference between being maybe the way things are looking in the AFC, an AFC contender as opposed to a Super Bowl contender. It's almost very eerily similar to the first Brady Patriots Super Bowl team that found a way to get into the Super Bowl, double-digit underdogs in the Super Bowl, and yet found a way to win that game. That would be the type of team the Patriots would bring into a Super Bowl this season. Because if they made the Super Bowl, no matter how they do it, as long as it was one of the top seeds in the NFC, they could probably be a 7 to 10 point underdog in a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's very similar to 2001 for a multitude of reasons, right? Because I wouldn't necessarily say that it's happened exactly the same way as it did in 01, but you have a veteran quarterback in Cam Newton who's a name brand, similar to how Drew Bledsoe was a name brand back in 01. And then you have the rookie come in and take the job and lead the team into a much better record than what they had the year before with the veteran QB under center, and the improvements of the team around them, plus some of the holdovers from the last good Patriots team, because the Patriots in the 90s under Bill Parcells were a decent team. They went to a Super Bowl. They lost to Green Bay and Brett Favre in the Super Bowl with under Parcells. And a lot of those players, Bruschi, Malloy, Law, McGinnis, those guys were Parcells holdovers, right? That Belichick inherited as the head coach of the Patriots in 2000 when he officially became the head coach. And then you throw Brady in there, huge thing to throw in, and you go from there, and now all of a sudden you're a dynasty. So I'm not saying the Patriots are going to be a dynasty, but they have some similar bones to that 2001 team. I don't think this defense is as good as the 01 team.
No.
To me, they already have one guy in the Hall of Fame in Ty Law from the 01 team. Richard Seymour probably is going to get into the Hall of Fame at some point. Willie McGinnis has a case to be a Hall of Famer as well. So there's multiple Hall of Famers on that 01 Patriots defense. This defense has got some good players, some guys that are going to make the Pro Bowl, some guys that might make all-pro teams this year, like Matthew Judon, but they are not a Hall of Fame caliber defense at the moment. So we'll see, but it does have shades of 2001 with the setup, right? The young quarterback, the team playing very, very well. they've had some losses here, maybe against Dallas in particular in week 6, or even Tampa in week 4, that were similar to that Patriots team. They lost to the Rams that they beat in the Super Bowl. They lost to them during the regular season, but they lost to them by, I want to say, a field goal. It might have been it was a one-score game. And you talk to a lot of those Patriot players, you watch all the documentaries on that team and things like that, and they said that that loss to the Rams was actually a huge benefit to them because it gave them confidence that they could go toe to toe with the best teams in the league, because the Rams were the gold standard at that point in the NFL. So playing Dallas tight, playing Tampa Bay tight, I think those games actually gave the Patriots the confidence that they could hang against some of these better teams in the league already this year, and we'll see. But a long way to go before we're truly making the 0-1 comparisons.
And look, nobody would. I mean, the networks would go just bananas if the Patriots and Tampa Bay were in the Final Four of the playoffs, and what that could possibly mean. But yeah, let's slow things down a little bit. You were talking about the opponents that the Patriots have faced. Okay, 7 wins this season. The overall record of those teams, 50 and no, excuse me. If you take a look at the record of the teams, that the Patriots beat, the 7 teams, the record is 31-52. That's because they beat the Jets twice and Houston. Those are the games that really bring the record down. The good news is that the better wins have come recently. As we mentioned, they're winning the games easily. So you can only beat who's on your schedule. And when you do it easily, that's the impressive part. They have not allowed a touchdown over the last 7 quarters. So all of that is great. And here comes Tennessee. And nobody cares what really happened against Houston because the writing was on the wall. Matter of fact, I picked Houston. I said last week on my show I was close to picking him to win the game outright because you could just see it. Tennessee had lost to the Jets, already. They had all these big wins against all these big teams, and the letdown with the Patriots was just so there. And to see Tannehill throw 4 interceptions and the team, the concentration level just wasn't there. But there is no question this is not the same team. With not only Derrick Henry out, but you take a look at it, and there are 3 receivers that are supposed to fit in with Jones, who's been out a lot this season. Rodgers, Westbrook, and Marcus Johnson have combined for nearly 900 snaps. That's a lot of playing time for receivers that nobody knows who these guys are. There's not a lot of talent. Sort of reminds you of last year's Patriots wide receivers group. And this is obviously this is a good thing because then you're talking about Dontrell Hilliard in the backfield for the Titans as well. So you can say all you want about how great the win was against the Rams and it surprised everybody and that was huge. They followed it up with another win against the Saints and they had to hold on late to do that. But this is still a battered team with a lot of key players out and no one really knows how far the Titans can go. But honestly, without Derrick Henry, they are not going into the Super Bowl. They're not going to get close to the Super Bowl in my mind. And I think this is the type of game that probably proves that.
Yeah, before I kind of unpack a lot of what you just said, I think that it's important to mention what a lot of the Patriots players have said so far this week about the Titans and Bill Belichick as well.
I can imagine.
And that is that they take on the personality of their head coach. And Mike Vrabel is a hard-nosed, fundamentally sound football player back in his day that really had great mental toughness and resilience. And this Titans group has lost a lot of players to injury. A lot of key players on that team on both offense and defense are on injured reserve right now for Tennessee. And yet they're 8-3. And on top of that, Vrabel has played the Patriots tough as the head coach of the Titans. He's won both games against Belichick since he's gotten to Tennessee.
Including the playoff game.
Yeah, final nail in the coffin of the Brady era in the 2019 playoffs. So there's a lot of trends. If we take out all of the intangibles and we take out all of the past history with Brady and with Belichick and Vrabel, excuse me, there's a lot of in the now trends that say the Patriots should win this game in a blowout, right? The Titans are limited offensively. They are a turnover machine right now on offense without Derrick Henry. Their play action passing game is not as efficient. Their running game is not as efficient. The Patriots defense is lights out right now. And even this Titans defense, you look at a lot of the analytics and a lot of the metrics, and they all don't like the Titans, right? Basically, everything points to the fact that the Titans right now are playing above their talent level, or at least their healthy talent level, right? And eventually that tends to kind of even back out. Maybe it did a little bit last week, but I think that game last week, even you look at the final box score, and the Titans low-key dominated that game against Houston. They just turned the ball over 5 times. And it's those 4 or 5 plays that flipped that game in the Texans' favor, but they outgained them 420 yards to 190. They moved the ball easily on offense. The Texans averaged just over 3 yards per play with Tyrod Taylor. So that overall game in a lot of ways really kind of gets thrown out to me to a degree, because the Titans are not going to come to Foxborough this week and turn the over 5 times again. They're just not. They're going to protect the football better than that.
Yes.
So I think this is going to be a hard-fought battle, right?
I agree.
The Titans are a team that tends to play the Patriots tough and tend to be physical, stout, hard-nosed, fundamentally sound, all those Vrabel qualities. So with all that being said, when you go up against Bill Belichick's defense, especially one that's as red hot as it is now, and you are essentially forced to play left-handed just on your own merit, right? Not even what Bill Belichick is game planning, not even what he's trying to take away from you, but just because you're coming to the stadium without some of your key players. We saw what happened last week with Atlanta without Calvin Ridley and Cordero Patterson. They got shut out by the Patriots. And if you look also at this scheme that the Titans run, they run the same offense without Derrick Henry as they do with Derrick Henry. They haven't changed their offense. They want to run the football. They want to incorporate play action off the running game. And then they go to that West Coast style when they have to drop back and pass. And the Patriots essentially played this offense on Thursday night against the Falcons, because Arthur Smith is the architect of both offenses, right? And they shut him out with a very similar situation. A good veteran quarterback in Matt Ryan, who really only had one weapon in Kyle Pitts to throw the ball to. The Titans, I think, will have A.J. Brown in this game, but he's going to be limited, and that's it. They don't have anything else if you're the Patriots that scares you. And I'm trying, outside of the Vrabel angle, I'm trying really, really hard to find an angle that says that this Titans offense can produce points against the Patriots defense. And it's really, really difficult unless you throw in some turnovers by the Patriots offense and some trickery potentially by the Titans offense, where maybe we see a double pass or a wide receiver throw a pass or some sort of trick play and something like that. And I think that they will have something like that in the game plan, because Vrabel is going to come into this game and know, if I just try to go head to head with Bill Belichick's defense right now with what we have on offense, we're going to get shut out just like the Atlanta Falcons did, or maybe we'll score a touchdown early like the Browns did, and then they'll shut us out for the next 3.5 quarters. So there's going to have to be some trickery. The Titans defense is going to have to play aggressively to try to force turnovers and give the Titans offense some short fields. If this game goes the way that it did for Atlanta, I don't see how the Titans offense scores more than 10 points in that game.
It's going to be more of a, I think this is going to be in the teens. And if Tennessee wins this game, maybe they win the game like 13-10, 16-13.
Yeah. I mean, you look at some of the models that they've had. They beat the Saints 23-21 a few weeks ago. maybe something in the high teens, low 20s is realistic in a way that the Titans could win the game. But the Patriots can win games like that too, right? They
Sure.
can win rock fights also with their running game and with their defense. So if I'm the Titans, though, they have the Colts breathing right down their necks in the division. They don't have Derrick Henry coming back anytime soon. They're kind of taking on water here a little bit. So if I'm Tennessee, this is a kitchen sink type of game plan, right? Everything that you got, every wrinkle, every trick play, every blitz, every coverage rotation, every trick up their sleeve that they have in this game needs to be pulled out, because they take another loss. That's 4 losses. Like I said, the Colts breathing right down their necks in the division. This could be very quickly. The Titans could go from the top seed in the AFC to fighting for a wild card spot by the end of the year.
Yeah, the good thing is they go into a bye, and then they come out of the bye playing. Right now, the best team on their schedule, remaining 5 games, would be Pittsburgh, San Francisco.
Right.
And then they've got Jacksonville, Miami, Houston. So they still have a very good chance of making the playoffs, but they do have the tiebreaker over the Colts, which gives them another little bit of an edge. But that's why, like you said, this is such an important game for them, because it's like, if we can win this game with that remaining schedule, then if we can beat the Patriots as hot as they are with all the injuries we have, then we should be able to hold on for the top spot. But if we lose big, if it does look like everything is just going the wrong way, then who knows? Maybe you go 2-3, 1-4 down the stretch after the bye. But look, this is just a different team as well than Atlanta. They're just made up differently because of Vrabel. They have more of a foundation, more of a winning foundation. Like you said, it's Vrabel against Belichick. He's been able to win that upset kind of game. And that's how weird this is. It's like, just a few weeks ago, Tennessee would have been more of a 6-point favorite, and it's completely flipped in just a short period of time.
Yeah, it is incredible how Vrabel, his personality, you can just see it on the team, with the Titans, that they have taken on the head coach's persona on the field. And so many of their players that these guys that are out there, even still, even the guys that are not out there also play like this, though, played so much like Vrabel did when he was with the Patriots. And one of the reasons why Bill Belichick knew that Vrabel was going to be a head coach someday is because of his football IQ and how smart he was and how sound he was fundamentally. But then you also see he's a little bit of a joker too, right? He's the guy that was notorious for pulling pranks in the locker room and
keeping
doing
it
stuff,
light. Yep.
Right, keeping it light. So he's got a great mix for a head coach of a guy that can be tough, that can be hard-nosed, that can be the disciplinarian when he needs to be, but also has this lighter, fun side to him as well. And it's really worked in Tennessee, and I wouldn't take the Titans lightly the way that they've played the Patriots in the past. And Vrabel in particular seems to have a really good feel for what the Patriots offense and Josh McDaniels likes to run and what they like to do offensively in New England. And both times that the Patriots played the Titans, in 2018 in the regular season down in Tennessee, and then in 2019 in the playoff game, they have held the Patriots offense in check. It's been a really rough going for the Patriots offense in both of those games. So obviously, with his institutional knowledge, with something that he's just knows about the Patriots and their scheme offensively, Vrabel always seems to have good plans. And their defense, although they're missing a few guys, is healthier than the offense is, and is playing better football than the offense is. So I think that if there's a way to win this game for Tennessee, it's a defensive battle where maybe they do get some turnovers from Mac Jones, who has been very, very good with turnovers for a rookie quarterback, but has still had some turnovers this season for sure. I mean, he had one last week against Atlanta. He only has had a couple of games this year where he's been 100% turnover free. So I think that there is a opportunity there for the Titans to win, like you said, a 16-13 rock fight type of game. The weather is supposed to be clear in terms of precipitation, no rain, no snow, nothing like that, but it's going to be cold. It's going to be windy probably just because it's November in Foxborough. But that's the only way I can see the Titans being able to pull this out. If the
Sure.
Patriots can put up any type of offense and put any points on the board, then I think this game is going to be over quickly. Yeah.
And look, like you said, you got Jeffrey Simmons is becoming a very good player in this league up front.
Yeah.
So that would be a good matchup. Byard's always been pretty successful in the secondary. Hooker's had a really nice season, and I was surprised that it took Hooker this long to kind of find his niche in the NFL, because he was a really good player at Iowa. Always felt that he was going to be a good pro, but he's having his best season. And let's remember, Tennessee did not have a good defense last year. Especially, they could not get off the field on third downs. The secondary was terrible. So the defense is a lot better this year, even though Dupree, and that was really the trade-off. It was, we're going to use the money on someone like Bud Dupree, and we'll let our tight end, of course, we know where he is right now, go. And that switch so far, it hasn't really totally worked out for them, or really for either party. And sometimes that happens. But even though that's the case, there's still some good players on defense, like you said, and that's where Tennessee, and you mentioned the turnover situation. It matters where, and if they get the turnover, it matters where is the turnover.
Right.
Because a lot of the turnovers that Mac Jones has had recently have not really resulted in anything major. He's had some of those major turnovers earlier in the season, but Tennessee just can't have, all right, we have an interception to stop a drive. No, they have to have a turnover inside New England territory that results in a score, and most likely 7 points. So that's the kind of turnovers that they're going to have in this football game.
Yeah, last week against Atlanta, Mac's turnover came in the second half. It was in the high red zone, right outside the red zone area. And Terrell had a nice return on it. Mac actually made the tackle, which might have saved a pick six, honestly. But he had a nice return on it, but they still, I think, scrimmaged from like the 40 or the 45-yard line. And the way the Patriots defense was playing, they couldn't even get, I don't even think they got points out of it. So you look at, that is a really good point. A turnover early, a turnover in Patriots territory, or a return that ends up in Patriots territory to give them some sort of a short field. Because I look at this Titans run defense is tough. They are a good run defense. They haven't given up over 100 yards on the ground since week 5, since they gave up almost 200 against Jacksonville in week 5. And since then, they've been a top 5 run defense in the NFL in just about every category. So they've really turned it around in that department. Now, you can throw on them a little bit. They're a little shorthanded at cornerback. They're playing some backups. And you look at what the Saints did. I basically throw out what Tyrod and the Texans did in terms of the Patriots. I mean, it's totally different style of quarterbacks. And the Texans' offense is putrid. So I didn't really look too much into what the Texans did. But you look 2 weeks ago at New Orleans, Trevor Siemian almost threw for 300 yards against this defense and a couple touchdowns, passer rating over 100, really good game by Siemian. And I know of defense to Trevor Siemian, but I think Mac Jones is just as good, if not better, already probably at this point than Trevor Siemian is. So looking at some of the things that New Orleans did, they were able to really dial up quite a few coverage beaters for the different types of coverages that Tennessee likes to run. They like to run a lot of cover one. They do play some split safety zone. Some of those things that Sean Payton was kind of able to dial up in flood zones or attack man-to-man matchups when the Titans did go man-to-man, allowed Siemian to throw for a lot of yards in that game. So although you want to be careful, because you do want your defense to win the game for you in a lot of ways now if you're the Patriots, but letting Mac cook a little bit in this game is not a terrible idea, because I think if you're going to try to run the ball, you're kind of running into a little bit of a brick wall in this Titans front right now. It's a really, really stout front. They have good linebacker play. You mentioned Jeffrey Simmons. He's a good player as well on the interior defensive line. So it's tough tough team to just go downhill against in the run game. And the Patriots got a great run game. They have a great offensive line, so you feel good about them running the football against almost anybody. But I think it's going to be tough sledding, and the yards are going to be difficult. Now, they could try to scheme up the running game a little bit, try to get out on the outside, try some jet sweeps, things like that to try to soften up the middle a little of this Titans defense, which I'm sure they will do. But I do see this as a game where they might throw to run, right? They might try to get up early with the passing game against this Titans secondary that's a little bit banged up as well, and then run the football in the second half to kind of squeeze the clock out at that point. It does feel like maybe one of those games where you try to get ahead with the passing game and then rely on the running game late to close it out, because if you try to come in and run the ball on 1st and 10 and then run it on 2nd and 8 and then you're in 3rd and 6, that's kind of the game that the Titans want to play on Sunday.
Yeah, well, let's keep in mind that the Patriots running game, which has coincidentally coincided with their winning streak, they averaged 86.7 rushing yards over their first 6 games.
Yeah.
And over their last 5, in their 5-game winning streak, nearly double at 151.8. So that's how the Titans, that's their remedy of trying to beat the Patriots, is if we can take our run defense and use it to our advantage, and we can limit the Patriots to more of the way that they struggled early on in the season when they weren't winning as much, well, then that's how we can have a shot at beating New England. And a couple of trends that favor the Titans. And remember, you're talking about beating the Rams and beating the Saints. Saints didn't have the same playoff players, obviously, that they had earlier in the season, but the Rams did. And that is the fact that the Titans have 6 wins this year versus 2020 playoff teams, not including 9-2 Arizona. They are 5-0 straight up and against the spread as a dog this year. So they love being in the dog role.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me with the head coach, right?
That's right. And they're 5-0 straight up and against the spread this year versus teams off double-digit wins. So, and that's usually meaning you're going to be a dog. So, yeah, that's why I say throw out the Houston game. They were a heavy favorite. They've lost in that spot already when they had Derrick Henry against the Jets. So that didn't mean anything. Concern yourself more with the fact that, I look at the Ram game. They were out yardaged. It wasn't like the Rams threw 4 or 5 interceptions or had a multitude of. It wasn't like a big disparity in turnovers with both teams. But Tennessee found a way to win, and the defense did a really good job in that game.
Yeah, that's the thing about this Titans team, right? A lot of the Patriots players we spoke to yesterday, Belichick said it on some of the radio hits that he had over the last couple of days. It's a really resilient bunch, right? It's just a team that's it's hard to knock them out, right? And when you think that they're down and you think that you got them out, or you think that Derrick Henry goes out or Julio Jones goes out and, oh, well, that's it for the Titans. Well, they just keep winning other than last week. So
sounds familiar.
Yeah, you look at this team and you can't go into a game, and I know that the spread is 6.5 and the Patriots are the red hot team and all this stuff, but you just can't go into this game taking Tennessee lightly because they're a little bit banged up banged up really on offense. But you look at Vrabel too, and you see a guy, as you mentioned, he is going to play up this underdog status, right? And I'm sure Saturday night before this game, when they're in their team meeting, and he'll pull up like ESPN's picks for Sunday or something like that, and everybody picks the Patriots, and this is all sorts of stuff that Belichick has done in the past numerous times. Nobody believes in us. We're the dynasty is over. We're too old. We're too slow. We're too this. That was. They won it in 01 like that. They won it in 18 like that, right? That's how they win these games or win a lot of these games in the Belichick era. And, Vrabel is taking the page right out of his head. So they're going to come in on Sunday, the Titans, with a chip on their shoulder, saying that nobody thinks we can win this game. The Patriots are the darlings of the national media right now because they're on this winning streak, and Tennessee will be ready to play. I have no doubts about that. And this does not spell a game like what we saw against the Browns, let's say, who are also a team with some talent on it that could have given the Patriots more of a game than they did, and they kind of rolled over.
They're mentally fragile. Cleveland.
Right. This Titans team is not like that. With that being said, like we keep saying, there's so many trends, there's so many matchups, there's so many little details of this game as well that just heavily favor the Patriots. You know, the Titans are a team on offense, just taking out the injuries and Derrick Henry, just from a stylistic perspective, that want to run the football, and then they want to sequence play action off of the run. And since 2019, really, when Ryan Tannehill has truly taken over there and turned his career around, he's been absolutely lethal off of play action. One of the best play action passers in the NFL. Now, it's not quite as efficient without Henry, because the defense is not respecting the run game as much as they would with Henry, but it's still 8.2 yards per attempt off of play action is a lot better than the 6.5 that they're averaging without play action. So they want to run play action. They bootleg it. They run those little half boots where they kind of keep the player in the pocket, but they move the pocket just a little bit to buy him some more time. They'll run crossing routes down the field, deep vertical routes down the field off of play action and hit those. Now, the Patriots, over the last 5 games in particular, have been one of the best run defenses in the NFL. And you look at play action, they're actually, New England, the second best play action defense in the entire NFL this year. They're only giving up 6.4 yards per attempt off play action. So they are locking down these Shanahan, LaFleur, McVay, Arthur Smith coaching tree schemes. They are absolutely locking down the early down run play action sequencing that these teams are doing. And as a result, they're getting these quarterbacks, Baker, Ryan, Darnold, into third down. And then the play action goes away. The smoke and mirrors goes away. And it just becomes who can execute consistently in a traditional drop back passing game. Bill can spin the dial. He brings pressure. He does his thing. The Belichick stuff comes into play at that point. And it's been very, very difficult for offenses to move the ball. And this Titans team follows a very, very similar script to what some of these other teams have done. And it feels like more of the same for the Patriots defense will work just fine this week. Kind of the same formula that they've played with over this 5-game winning streak is exactly what they can deploy on Sunday against the Titans. And they've executed it so darn well in this 5 games that there hasn't been a big injury. The only thing that you can think of that maybe would get them to slip up is if they've been reading their press clippings a little bit too much and are a little bit too high and mighty on themselves because of this winning streak, which does happen. Belichick tends to be a little bit of a neutralizer when it comes to those types of things, because trust me, Bill is telling them how much they suck. Right? He's throwing up every single low light he can find in the team meeting room and saying, "See, you guys aren't that good. You know, this play wasn't very good. That play wasn't that. You know, Mac, what are you doing here? You know, Kyle Duggar, what are you doing there? Right? You know, he's finding all of the low lights and reminding them, hey, we still got work to do. We still got areas that we can improve in, and that's how he tries to neutralize some of this. You know, let's not get too high and mighty in week 12 type of thing.
Golden Tate was signed, so we'll find out whether or not
he's going to play after basically, he hasn't played all year, hasn't played on the Titans. He's been on the Titans for 3 days. That doesn't bode well for A.J. Brown. I know Marcus Johnson, who's came on a little bit late for the Titans since Julio went out, has been really, really good for them. And he's on injured reserve now. So you also look at kind of their tight end room.
They've got nothing out of it. Yeah.
One of the big reasons why their early down stuff was so successful is that they ran a lot of their run game and play action passing out of 12 personnel with 2 tight ends on the field. That's been a big part of their offense. And now without Jonnu Smith there and with the tight ends that they have there being basically non-factors, that hasn't been a big part of the offense this year either. So I
thought that was a bad move when they made it. When they basically said Dupree, for our tight end, I was like, why are you doing that? Especially when that's what makes your offense go. That's part of what makes your offense go. For a guy that has a 1 year history, and especially on his contract year, and he's had some injury concerns, and it just hasn't worked out for him.
Yeah, you look at Johnny's stat line with the Titans, and it's not overly impressive. I think his career high in yards is 468 or 470 or something like that. He had 8 touchdowns last year for Tennessee, though, in the red zone. A guy that was a real red zone weapon for them. But his versatility, his ability to line up in different spots, block from different alignments, and catch the ball in different ways added another dimension to that early down stuff. You know, they run the bootleg action, and you have Johnny sliding across the formation with the quarterback, and you can drop a pass off at the line of scrimmage and have him gain 20 yards from it with yards after the catch. Or they can incorporate screen passes, and they can incorporate him in the red zone. And he was somebody that was a Swiss Army knife of sorts for their offense, and his blocking ability was really big in what they did in the run game. And you also look at Corey Davis leaving Tennessee as well.
That's right.
And not only Davis was a much better receiver and much more productive receiver, which was huge, but he's also lauded as a very, very good run blocker as well. So they had Jonnu, they had A.J. Brown, they had Corey Davis, 3 big, physical, athletic, yards after the catch type of players that were also very, very good run blockers. And now 2 of those guys are gone, and one of them has banged up ribs, and Derrick Henry's not there, and that's why a lot of the Titans, the floor is kind of falling out underneath it. I think a lot of people thought that, you know, the Jets signed Corey Davis to this monster contract. A lot of people, I think Corey Davis is a little bit overrated, and maybe he's overrated as a number 1 guy. Sure. But when he's your number 2 guy to A.J. Brown.
He's very good number 2. Yes.
Yeah, and the way that he fits that structure that they are running in Tennessee from a run game perspective and the run blocking as well. He was a really vital part of that offense last year and over the last couple of seasons that walked out the door. So you lose 2 guys in that skill group that are pretty massive. It's amazing to talk about all these things, and the Titans are 8-3. You know, it's just incredible because I've combed through all the stats this week. Like I said, you know, DVOA, EPA per play, even just, you know, yards and points and all the basic stats. Too. And they're a middling football team, right? They're 18th in DVOA overall. Their offense and defense are both outside the top 10. They are a team that should be around 500. Right,
and they might end up close to 500.
Based on the metrics, they are punching above their weight at the moment. And usually when that happens, not all the time, the nerds are not always right, but we're right a lot. And usually when that happens, it means that the regression is coming, right? The regression back to the mean is coming for Tennessee. And if you're the Patriots, you hope it starts even more so this week as it did last week.
And that's, as we said in the beginning, why it's such an important game for Tennessee before they get into the bye. But that was the trade-off. Davis, Jonnu Smith for Bud Dupree. We'll sign Julio Jones, and we'll hope that'll fix things. It just has not been a good trade-off at all for Tennessee. And maybe things would have been okay if Derrick Henry and most of the players would have stayed healthy, but that's just not the case, which is anytime your MVP, it's like McCaffrey, anytime your MVP is done and gone, you could patch things up a little bit here and there. Maybe because you got off to a good start, you'll still squeak into the postseason, but you're not doing anything special. It's just not going to happen. All right, so good talking, especially with Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow. We're recording this the day before Thanksgiving, so a lot of football starting on Thursday, Patriot game on Sunday. And again, it should be cold, but that's the way it is in late November. And then, like you said, after this, the schedule?
Buffalo Monday night.
Buffalo Monday night before the bye, right?
Yeah, before the bye. The Patriots have 2 straight. I don't think the second Bills game, which is here in Foxborough, I don't think that one's in prime time. But they have Monday Night Football against Buffalo, the bye week, and then Saturday night prime time just announced yesterday against the Colts the following week in week 14, and then they come back home for Buffalo in week 15. So they got, this is it, right?
Yep.
You know, this is the bar. Like, this is the, if they clear this bar, then the Patriots, they might win the top seed in the AFC and be the #1 seed if they go 3-1 in this stretch.
And it's really because of, not just because of how they're playing, but the other teams. Nobody expected the Bills to all of a sudden be this erratic. The Chiefs, even though they're getting better, they still got a ways to go before anybody believes they're back. And the whole AFC North is just everybody beating up on anybody. So you just can't really tell what the heck is going on there. So it's pretty much wide open, which is what's a lot of fun. And that's why the Patriots will hopefully take advantage of it if you're a Patriot fan. So, Evan, I appreciate it as always. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
You as well.
And I appreciate your time. And we'll talk to you on the other side as we preview the Monday night showdown with the Buffalo Bills.
Should be fun.